cooperation and integration among Arab capital markets. How can better integration be achieved? What modules can be followed? What is the role of technology and capital market intermediaries? Let us hear from the experts. Please welcome to the stage Dr. Nasser Saidi, President Nasser Saidi and Associates, who will moderate this session, and our speakers, Mr. Muhammad Ali Yassin, Managing Director, National Bank of Abu Dhabi Securities, Mr. Ahmed Al Marhoun, Director General, Muscat Securities Market, Mr. Christian Chamorro Cortland, Assistant Professor at Zayed University, and Dr. Fadi Khalaf, Secretary General, Arab Federation of Exchanges.
As you know from the title of our session, it's about cooperation and integration among Arab capital markets. Some people are wondering whether the cooperation and integration is actually there. So we'll be talking about that. But let me preface it a little bit by saying, well, you already know the speakers and you have their bios, so I'm not going to introduce the speakers. I'll make some preliminary remarks as to where we are and where potentially we should be heading. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible, and then there'll be some polling questions to the floor. If we look at the size of our capital markets, I know Dr. Fadi Khalaf is going to be giving us a couple of statistics quickly. If I look at the total size of our markets as of, say, mid-November, thereabouts, it's about 970 billion, less than $1 trillion worth. All our Arab capital markets altogether. That is less than Hong Kong. Hong Kong on its own is about 1.5 trillion. Yeah? So all our Arab capital markets together. And yet they are very fragmented. They're very small, they're very fragmented. And they are not linked to each other. We don't allow flows of capital to go from one market to the other. And that shows itself up in the lack of liquidity. So if you look at turnover ratios are very low. And on top of that, we are still at below turnover rates that we had pre-crisis, i.e. before 2008, 2009. We have not been able to recover interest from investors in our markets. As a result of that, we also have very high bid-ask spreads. We have very high bid-ask spreads, much higher than what you have internationally. And that, again, when you have large bid-ask spreads, is not only a reflection of the lack of liquidity, but also means high transactions costs. And so for buyers and sellers, you're asking them to pay more than they otherwise would pay. And as a result, fewer investors want to go in. So I'm hoping that our session today will start addressing it. What should we be doing? Is it a matter of technology platforms? Because if it is a matter of technology and technology platforms, I think that's resolved. We don't need to have this session. If it is a matter of regulation and agreements between regulators, then I think we need to discuss that and what needs to be put in place. If it's a matter of harmonization of standards and regulations as well, I think we should be able to discuss that. How are we going to facilitate cross-border transactions? What's required? I note that in the past year, for example, the reclassification by MSCI of Qatar and UAE from frontier to emerging market status attracted lots of interest. So we got institutional investors. We have foreign investors now coming into those markets. It's highly likely that Saudi Arabia will be reclassified next year, probably by the first half of 2015, from frontier to emerging. So what's happening is that this reclassification is attracting investors. Is this part of the way out? Because once you have to abide by the standards that are required to be classified as frontier and you comply with them, it is imposing automatically common standards among those markets, and it also means that you've liberalized the market. So a lot to discuss. And we've got both people who are practicing in the market and people who are helping organize it. So I'd like to start with you, Dr. Khalaf, because you've got an important role. You're running an institution that is meant to bring our capital markets together. So what do we need to do?
First, I would like to show some statistics just to put the light on where are our exchanges and where the liquidity is concentrated. Just in few slides, because I have only 3 to 4 minutes. Our Federation of Arab Federation of Exchanges regrouped those 16 countries with 18 stock exchanges. And the total market capitalization end of September 2014 was $1.385 trillion. But we can see that the concentration of the market capitalization is located in Saudi Stock Exchange, in Qatar Exchange, and Abu Dhabi, then Kuwait. So mainly we are concentrated in the GCC countries, while we have many other small stock exchanges having like 0.06, 0.16% of the total market capitalization of the region. This is something to take in consideration if we want to link our exchanges together. But linking exchanges means also liquidity. We have like $782 billion as the value of transaction for the first 9 months of 2014, but this liquidity is also concentrated on Saudi Arabia. 66% of this liquidity is in Saudi Arabia, then Dubai, and then Qatar and Abu Dhabi. So also when we link, if we intend to link those markets, we have to take in consideration that those 4 or 5 stock exchanges are interested to be maybe alone, or to, if they link their market to small exchanges, will those stock exchanges drain the liquidity from their liquidity of 66%? And we can also see it as turnover velocity. We have 102% as turnover velocity in Dubai market, and Saudi exchange we have 88% as a turnover velocity. So again and again, the liquidity and market capitalization are only concentrated on few stock exchanges in our region. Just the last slide before I go back to my seat is to compare our markets to the international markets with the World Federation of Exchanges. We can see that we represent of the value of international stock exchanges, value of transaction, we represent only 1.42%, when they are having like $55 trillion as value of transaction. We are having only 782 at the end of the last 4 quarters. And the market capitalization, we represent only 2.17% of the all capital market capitalization of the WFE members, the World Federation of Exchanges members. And the turnover velocity, we are way below the international average, which is 85.94%, while our average of turnover velocity is 56.48%. Those numbers are very important for us to start discussing about how to link our exchanges. Thank you.
Is linking the answer?
Linking, we are already linked through online trading. Now, if you want to buy on any stock exchange in our region, you can buy through many brokerage companies and companies giving the possibility of online trading. It's possible. Do we have a linkage for the post-trade? This is a question. And then, will the big exchanges are ready really to link with small exchanges? Will they drain the liquidity? So for us, we are trying to now to gather the possibilities and looking at the integration. Between integration and linkage, there is a big gap. The integration means that we have to harmonize our legislation and regulations and rule. But to harmonize them, maybe we have to start somewhere. Starting somewhere is to take all those regulations and try where are the common points. Maybe we have 30% of legislation of rules already harmonized. Then we still have to harmonize 70% or maybe 60%. We should start somewhere, and this is, I think, one of the role of the Arab Federation of Exchange for the next year.
So where do you think is the biggest gap? Is it listing requirements? Is it compliance? Is it participation?
Maybe the biggest gap is the word sovereignty. Each of our stock exchanges think that staying alone keeps its sovereignty and its independency and its control on its market. So maybe we have to have the will to coordinate with others.
So it's the national flag issue.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's turn to Muscat. Mr. Ahmed Al-Marhoun actually runs the Muscat exchange. But I think you also have another role.
No, that's...
Namely, your role is to bring the exchanges together.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm calling you the marriage counselor of our exchanges. So how do we get our exchanges to get married?
Well, Dr. Nasser, إذا تسمح لي, I will speak Arabic in the first session, first contribution it will be in Arabic. So هذا الموضوع حقيقة قديم جديد, وبالتالي ربما الحضور ملوا هذا النقاش وباين من خلال عدم تجاوبهم مع الجلسة. أنا اشتركت مع الأخ محمد علي ياسين في عدة جلسات والكلام عن هذا الموضوع, وأتمنى أن لا تجي السنة القادمة ونتكلم عن نفس الموضوع. يعني وزير الاقتصاد الصباح كان يقول نحن بحاجة إلى توحيد النظم والأطر التنظيمية. لا, نحن بحاجة إلى إرادة فقط لا غير, هي الإرادة المفقودة. واسمحوا لي أستعير يعني إحدى الكلمات اللي استخدمها الأخ مشعل, قال قصور في عندما كان يوصف شيء في حالة معينة. نحن عندنا قصور في الإرادة, إرادة أن نحن نتعاون, وبالتالي يعني هذا الجلسة ربما تكررت في أكثر من موقع. أنا الحقيقة من الرعيل الأول اللي كنا نتكلم وكانت طموحاتنا كبيرة, والأخ جليل في هذيك الأيام كان رئيس البورصة عمان, عن ربط الأسواق المالية العربية. إحنا خففنا هذا الطموح الآن إلى ربط الأسواق المالية الخليجية, ربما لعدة أسباب, بعضها أسباب موضوعية. وبالتالي شكلنا أكثر من فريق وقمنا بأكثر من اجتماع, والأمور ربما بتمشي ولكنها ببطء. أقول بأنه إذا لم هذه الأسواق يعني تتوافق في شيء من التكامل, وإلا حنبقى مشرذمين مثل ما تفضل الدكتور ناصر وأشار بالمقارنة بين هونغ كونغ وبعض البورصات العربية فيما يتعلق بالقيم السوقية. لا, يعني الدكتور ناصر كان طموح جدا أن يستخدم هونغ كونغ. أنا قبل عدة سنوات كنت أعمل محاضرة وحاولت أن أستعين ببعض الإحصائيات فيما يتعلق بالقيم السوقية لبعض الاقتصاديات. يعني أسبانيا اللي تعتبر من الدول الأوروبية الفقيرة اقتصادها أكبر ربما من اقتصاديات الدول العربية, فبالتالي اقتصادياتنا الصغيرة هذا ما بتكون جاذبة للاستثمار الأجنبي. الاستثمار الأجنبي والصناديق الكبيرة اللي تملك المليارات بل تريليونز حسب ما سمعنا اليوم الصبح, يعني it will be 2 trillions in few years time. فبالتالي هذه الصناديق يجذبها الحجم غير متوفر عندنا, يعني باستثناء ربما المملكة العربية السعودية. إذن كيف نخلق هذا الحجم من أجل خلق يعني جذب الاستثمار؟ هو من خلال يعني إيجاد هذه الصيغة اللي من خلالها نربط هذه البورصات ونوسع من قاعدة الاستثمار وتكون عندنا البدائل اللي تقدر سواء المستثمر المحلي أو المستثمر الأجنبي. الحقيقة يعني اقتصادياتنا يعني في مجلس التعاون بالذات قياسا بالدول الأخرى كبيرة الحقيقة، يعني قدرت الآن تقدر بحوالي 1.6 تريليون. في 2020 احنا حنصل 2 تريليونز، يعني احنا بنتكلم عن ارقام يعني معقوله جدا. بقى كيف يعني هذه الاموال، هذه الاقتصاديات الكبيره، الاقتصاد الكبير اللي مجتمع طبعا، كيف احنا نبرزه في اطار يعني جاذب للاستثمار الاجنبي، سواء كان استثمار مباشر او غير مباشر. نحن دائما نركز على الاستثمار غير المباشر، لا الاستثمار المباشر كذلك مهم. شد انتباهي حقيقة مقارنة إحصائية قدمها الوزير فيما يتعلق بالاستثمار الأجنبي الجاذب لدولنا مقابل يعني الاستثمار من دولنا في داخل دولنا. هو قال بأن الاستثمار الأجنبي الذي أتى إلى بلداننا العربية أكثر من 600 مليار دولار، بينما الاستثمار البيني بين الدول العربية في حدود 100 مليار. يعني حاجة حقيقة محرجة، يعني إنه إحنا نملك حوالي 2 تريليونز استثمارات خارجية. أنا أقصد الدول العربية استثمارات خارجية. هل نحن بحاجة لاستثمار أجنبي؟ ودائما في مؤتمراتنا هذا نقول الاستثمار الأجنبي، لا إحنا مصدرين رأس المال الحقيقة. إحنا يجب أن نكون يعني مستوردين. إحنا عندنا مصدرين 2 تريليونز من الأموال العربية هي موجودة في الأسواق المالية العالمية وكلها في الأسواق. إذن يعني لماذا هذه الأموال المهاجرة ما نحاول ان احنا نكذبها بماذا؟ نكذبها من خلال هذا التكامل. يعني وبالتالي لابد من العمل على ايجاد الاطر اللي من خلالها نعمل الشيء اللي يجذب الاستثمار سواء المحلي او الاجنبي. اعتقد انه ربما في المراحل القادمه نضيف شيء من هذا.
لكن شو العمل؟ شو المطلوب؟ وين العقبة الأساسية؟
المطلوب نحن يعني الدكتور والحاضرين في 2005 الأمانة العامة لمجلس التعاون كلفت ماكنزي كونسلتنسي أن تعمل دراسة عن تطوير ودمج الأسواق المالية الخليجية. 2005، نحن الآن في 2004، في نهاية 2004، منذ 9 سنوات ولم يحصل شيء. أنا قرأت الدراسة يعني كانت يعني very comprehensive وكلها تتكلم عن إيجابيات هذا الربط. لم ما عملنا شيء. أنا أقول بأنه نحن عندنا قصور في الإرادة. نأتي إلى يعني مجلس التعاون، يعني هناك بعض يعني مثلا السعودية سوق كبير ربما ما يهمها إنها تندمج مع الأسواق الأخرى. أنا أقول بأنه نبدأ بسوق أو بسوقين أو 3، وحاليا نحن نعمل على هذا الجانب. إحنا آخر مرة منذ أسبوعين اجتمعنا في مسقط أبو ظبي ودبي من أجل تفعيل يعني أو البداية في السير بهذا الخطى.
صار في لجنة عمل، يعني
في حراك وناول. مثل ما قلت الأخ محمد علي ياسين قبل شوية، يقولون تتكلم في إيش يا أخي محمد؟ يعني أنت رجل في المعمعة وإحنا يقول أنت بدك تنفس وأنا بدي ساعدك. يعني أنا نفست شوية عن المشاكل اللي حقيقة إحنا بنعانيها من خلال تكرار الحوار بدون المقدامية على إيجاد العمل على واقع الأرض.
Muhammad, do they have reason not to be optimistic? I mean, you're active in the markets,
Yeah.
and you've been in the markets, what, 20 years?
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun.
And you're in Abu Dhabi. You're with NBAD. They're active.
Yes.
So why isn't it happening? And let me be a bit provocative, since we are in Dubai. We've got 3 markets in the UAE. Nasdaq Dubai, DFM, and Abu Dhabi Exchange. And now we're being promised also other markets for
SMEs and so on.
SMEs and family businesses and all the rest. So why isn't it happening, or is it happening?
Thank you, Doctor. Let me start thanking you all for inviting us to speak in Thomson Reuters and اتحاد الهيئات طبعا دكتور جلال. I will give you the point of view of a practitioner, practical brokerage company who had to work in the UAE and also at certain points owned companies in other stock markets, namely in Egypt and in Jordan, and we looked at Kuwait and Turkey. I think the definition of integration that is being talked about here needs to be split. If you're talking about a total integration of markets to be full like one market in terms of regulation, in terms of systems, in terms of, I think even that is optimistic what you saw here. But that is not what we should be aiming for. The industry today has moved much faster than the regulators, and they will always move faster than the regulators. There is an infrastructure that has been built and now give access to institutional investors to all these markets through either one account or through one brokerage company or through multiple accounts under different various structures. And Oman was one of the first markets that they had the omnibus structure there regulated, and therefore that's one was a place where many companies went and done that. So today, and I attended, I think, 2009, just when in Egypt there was a conference and we talked about this, and they were talking about the merger of the depositories. And at that time I said, from that time already institutions have access to all our markets through a custodian, international or some of the local ones. Today those custodians are going to go to every market. They're going to open accounts for the clients, so they are responsible for the pre-trade and post-trade activities. And they come back to you with an investor number, which you as a broker will have, and then you have relationships with every broker in every country, one or multiple. And then through technology and the platform that you have, you already are giving your clients those accessibility. So today, as regulators, with all due respect, you are behind the curve. As an industry, it is way ahead of where you are. So whether you decided to merge or not, I think it's in their interest, not yours. Because that's a lot of volume and business that is passing by that you are not seeing and you are not benefiting from. Two, who's benefiting now is the international financial institutions or the non-local ones. Why is the individuals are now not benefiting from all these features? It's because the regulators are not willing to go and take that extra step. It's the will that Mr. Ahmed Marwan has talked about. 16, today we heard that there are 16 institutions or 16 markets have signed part of the IOSCO. How can we be all part of IOSCO, agreeing to the regulations of IOSCO, and tell us between us 16 we don't have common ground? We have common ground. We have about, probably if you look in your regulations, 75 to 80% of the regulations is the same. Why can't today the custodian who is regulated by ESCA in the UAE be approved by the regulators in Kuwait and Saudi and Qatar and Jordan and Egypt as a counterparty? And therefore, he then, instead of him having to go to every market to open an account and be regulated by every market, just abide by what is required.
Question. I mean, that's a very valid point. Hasn't anyone proposed to the regulators that there should be MOUs where you recognize, or there should be passporting from one country to another? I mean, these are, if I look at the experience of the Asian countries, in particular ASEAN as an organization, for the past 10 years, they have working committees addressing these issues of market infrastructure, of issuance, and they have now mutual recognition agreements between regulators. The exchanges work together.
Indeed.
There is passporting. They've gone into swaps. So are you as an industry proposing these issues?
I don't think all the people that today are heading those institutions are huge experience. They all have been bankers, and they all have been in the financial industry for 20 and 30 years, and they know these things. But I'll tell you what I believe the problem is some of those regulators, with all due respect, believe that they need to be protective, not of they say protective of the individual investor. They do this, but I think they're protective also protectionism of the market. There's fear that, no, if we open the market for these individuals, these are going to burn their hands. Well, you have to give them the chance. They are not young children. Somebody, I think the Lebanese sir here, he talked about educating investors and going and doing that. That should be done. One of the things I think maybe Al-Hay'a could take this role to make it more, and they've done a lot on their website. I've seen some of two regulations where you have documents this thick telling you about, for example, insider trading or related party trading across every market. What are the changes? So there is this part, but are people willing to go? What I really want to say is we want the regulators to become enablers of integration rather than disablers of integration.
So
It's very simple.
They're
Because the
indicting you.
individuals are not seeing the benefits of those solutions that we're giving. It's all given to financial institutions.
but the people who are here, I think, are a mixture, no?
I don't think there's a lot of I don't
How
know
many
here.
people are from institutional investors here?
There you go.
How many people are investors here?
They all are.
You all are. Right, so, okay. So why do you think they're reacting to say we're not innovative?
No, I think honestly today, the individuals are not feeling the benefits of what is available in terms of technology because most of these solutions are offered for institutions. There is, when the private sector goes and does these kind of projects, it has to be looking at the P&L. It's not about politics, it's not about pride, it's not about anything. It's about, and therefore, if it makes money, so they make what is important for it to make money. It makes money in certain markets, it doesn't make in all markets. So therefore, and it is for institutions which are mostly foreign, and therefore the local is not feeling it. Although today I have to say there are about 5 companies that actually are active, and they can give you today, if you go to them, they can open for you an account, and you can trade under one account into all markets from Morocco all the way to this part of the world, to Yemen.
Right. Clear majority would go for privatization. Would you think it would work?
No, it will work, and I think one of the reasons why there's no real cooperation or integration between the Arab stock exchanges, let me say here, focus on the GCC, is because our exchanges are owned by the governments, and we are relying on the support of the governments. We are not relying on our own resources and our own efforts, and that's one of the reasons why we are moving ahead.
We're not moving ahead.
That's one of the major reasons that we are not moving ahead.
Not moving ahead. Agreed. So would the Arab Federation propose a white paper to privatize our exchanges?
In fact, the Arab Federation of Exchanges doesn't have a real point of view on this fixed point, because each stock exchange owned by, we reflect the point of view of all our exchanges. And when our exchanges are owned by the public sector, so they cannot ask for privatization. But knowing that this is an international trend, what we would like to just emphasize at this point that if we go public, if we privatize the stock exchanges, we prefer to not see it mutualized. Mutualized means owned by the brokerage companies.
No, we said demutualization.
Demutualization will be the solution, but mutualization will be really not the good experience, because some of our exchanges are suffering of the mutualization, as in that case we will have the interest of the brokerage firm prevailing of the interest of
Well, there's one example which is going to be coming up, which is Lebanon. The capital markets law in Lebanon calls for the privatization of
and I hope
the
they will
stock
not sell it
exchange
to the
of
brokers.
Beirut.
I hope they will not sell it
So
to the
that'll be a test. Let's see what will happen with that. Christian, you come to us from the academic side, so you're free from the politics and you don't belong to any government.
That's right.
So what about market infrastructure? Is it something that we should be looking at, and which parts would be relevant to us?
Thank you for having me here today. My background is academic, as you noted. It's also a legal background, so maybe it's a little bit of a different perspective from what the other panelists have mentioned. Before there can be integration of the markets, there first has to be growth of the individual markets. One of the ways that this can be done is through the introduction of CCPs, otherwise known as central counterparty clearinghouses. These have proven to act as effective risk management institutions. They have an insurance type function. They're more commonly used in the derivatives markets, which of course are still in their infancy in the Arab capital markets, but they are also used in the securities markets. Now, to my knowledge, in the UAE, there are only three CCPs, sorry. You have the Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange, which has its own CCP, which is the Dubai Commodities Clearing Corporation. You also have the NASDAQ Dubai, and you have the Dubai Mercantile Exchange, which uses the American CME, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, CCP. Of course, there needs to be more usage of CCPs, even in the securities markets. Now, of course, the argument might go that security markets don't really need CCPs, especially when you have delivery versus payment, which means that there's an instant transfer of the securities from one party to the other. So there's very minimum risk of actual counterparty default. However, having the CCP in place actually does create confidence in the markets. It creates certainty in the markets because there is a guarantee there. If a party were to default, the CCP would step in and provide liquidity and would guarantee the trades of the insolvent member or members. So a good way to do that, as I say, would be to introduce CCPs into the region. They're still in their infancy here. They're not very common. An idea has been suggested perhaps to have one regional CCP. Of course, that would now produce legal challenges, because the question would be which regulator would oversee this one regional CCP, and if there were to be a chaotic situation, let's say, where the CCP were to default itself, which central bank would step in to lend it liquidity and bail it out? So those are my views on CCPs.
But also there would be an issue of the economics of setting up a CCP for rather small markets, no? So wouldn't you fall back into having a government having to support it?
That's a very good point. In fact, you have two options with CCPs. They can be privatized or they can be owned by the government. My view is, in fact, that they should be owned by the government because, as I said before, if somebody's going to step in to bail the CCP out, it's going to be the government, it's going to be the central bank. So they should also have some sort of control or oversight of how the CCP manages its affairs. Whether you go for the privatized option or the public option, yes, it does have its costs, but of course the benefits outweigh the risks, and they've proven to do so.
All right. Let's have the fourth polling question, please. Okay, so question is, what is required for us to have more active liquid capital markets? Is it regulatory reform that we need? Is it improved market structures such as having repos and securities lending? Is it improved governance? Or the easy answer, all of the above? But I would rather if you chose. Yes. Okay, so all of the above, majority, followed by better governance, transparency and disclosure, followed by improved market structure. Regulatory reform does not seem to be important to you. Mohammed, are you surprised? Can I have a reaction from the panel?
From my side, I think that it's not a regulatory reform. In fact, we need some new legislation about shorting, about securities lending, especially to encourage the ETFs. And also we need the transparency, but mainly we need legislation that authorize more tools, sophisticated tools that can encourage the liquidity. This is
Would you agree?
Well, I think we need probably all those things to be in order to just grow or create or bring confidence and also attract more investments. I believe on the regulations, there is a lot of improvement. You know, yes, the issue started only 10 years or 12 years ago, but there's a lot of progress being achieved on that segment. But we need diversification, in fact. We need to introduce more financial instruments in order to create more depth into our market. But Dr. Nasser, if you allow me, I want to just comment on the CCP. This issue, I was approached by three exchanges in the GCC. All of those exchanges want to create CCB. Imagine, for our, you said, a small market, even not qualified for one CCB. Now we have three exchanges in the region. All of them, they want to establish a CCB. I think we need one CCB, and that's more than enough for us. The ownership of the CCB can be owned by the existing exchanges, because that will serve the exchanges and that will, you know, create the or bring the confidence that we require.
Well, I think the business case is straightforward. I mean, the economics would not support multiple CCPs.
This is the way we think.
What's your reaction to what we heard?
I honestly think in terms of increasing activity and liquidity, it depends when you ask this question, Dr. Nasser. If you look like a year like 2014 in our exchanges, overall it has been a very good year in terms of traded values. So liquidity is good. The people are happy. In UAE, we're crossing close to the 500 billion, which is more than double last year's, for example.
But wasn't this an exceptional year
That
because
is
of MSCI?
that is what I think, and that was my next point, is that I think here we need to have a kind of a sustainable kind of liquidity rather than actually looking for pockets on cycles. Our markets in the Arab world, they are very, very hostage to cycles because they're mostly long only. So you find that cycle could be 5 to 7 years. You get these peak you build up over 3 years, and you get this crash. And by having those, other than having by increasing the tools to invest, like the short selling, the stock borrowing and lending in some markets, this will enable us to have a smoother kind of curve instead of just having a V's or U's every time those cycle changes. I think the freedom of movement and of transaction between exchanges will benefit also the kind of activity in the markets. And that means that there should be a freedom of transfer of currency between markets. Those sometimes in some countries we find it difficult sometimes. So it's a bit of that, but I think it is, as I said, we need to smoothen that curve rather than actually just go an effort to increase that liquidity in a year and really honestly is to act consistently. Not only when there's a crash, we all panic and we meet and we try to find ways, and then when it's up, you say, why do you want to change a sailing ship? Those are the things I think we can do.
Don't we also need more diversity? If you look at our stock exchanges, you've got telecoms, you've got banking and insurance, and real estate. That's it. You haven't encouraged family businesses to come in.
Yep.
So don't we also need much more diversity in terms of products?
I agree, and I think we've seen some of that, and that is, we're talking here, increase the depth of the markets by having more of those kind of new companies. The problem is that also needs to be balanced, because, for example, in the UAE, in the past 4 months, 3 IPOs are going to probably end up sucking around 10 billion dirhams. You spend about 5 years doing nothing, and then you do this, and you say, you wonder why is the secondary market liquidity going down? So it has to be a bit more balanced and spread out across, and we have more defensive sectors like education, and we have like healthcare, we have like Dubai parks. We'd like to, for example, in GCC, more companies to reflect the kind of economies of those countries, so more petrochemicals to come into some of those markets, which is not there. But I think also there's a part, there are instruments and there are trades that are happening in our markets outside the exchanges that you need the exchanges to get them inside. I think this morning sir from Egypt, you said that our markets work on one leg, that's on the equities. There's a very active bond market on the OTC. It is our own bonds, and they are going listed in London and they're going listed outside. Why can't we get those on board and get that to increase that liquidity? Dubai, when decided in 2 years, when they said we want to be center of Islamic, every sukuk now is there. We're like the second in the world now. So if you have the will, and if you have it's not difficult to do that at all. Today, and on the equity side even, why are we today pushing all our fund managers to go and list in Luxembourg and go in Liechtenstein in order, because the regulations here, if you are regulated in UAE, you cannot sell in Saudi. If you're regulated in Saudi, you cannot sell in Egypt. But if he goes to outside, all that way, he is able to sell to all of us. Don't you think that this is something, these are little things that we can probably, by sitting together, we can fix it up and make it more attractive and decide? Thank you.
Well, obviously we should. I'm going to open it up to questions from the floor. We have a little bit of time, I think, because we started late. One question over here. Could you just introduce yourself and...
Yes, my name is Cecil Owens, and I want to put something to the panel. Ahmed sat up there and said 9 years ago, you're sitting there talking about the same thing, okay? Integrating the markets. And each year he comes to these events, and I've been to them too, and you're still talking about doing something. When are we going to be able to say we did something? When's somebody going to sit down and say, okay, let's go through a model and do this? Where's the cooperation amongst not only the Capital Market Authority, but amongst the exchanges, okay? If you don't have this moving forward, then why even make it a topic at the next event? Because you're going to keep on doing the same thing you've been doing for the last 10 years.
Fair enough question. Any other questions? In front, up here, in front, here, in front. Right.
It's more of a comment on the privatization of exchanges. 21 years ago, I worked with Dr. Nasser on getting a fully privatized market up and running in Beirut in 1993. It worked. Very rudimentary, but it worked. Today, I question, if I take Egypt for an example, it's not really owned by the government. It has a very special status. It's governed by bank representatives, brokers, and so on. I wouldn't feel that if it goes private, it will do better. I would fear that maybe private, they'll be more profit-oriented, they will not develop technology or new products having a P&L in sight. So I beg to challenge the concept of privatization would push exchanges. So I mean, that's as a quick note. The other one, as we speak about Arab world and movement, my belief is let us not think of integration. Let's take cases, success stories, cross-listing. We have in Egypt EDRs. We could have GDRs as Gulf deposit receipts. If it works, it will show there is a real appetite. Because I'm not sure masses of Arabs are really dying to trade on another stock exchange today. I think selected investors are. So maybe a gradual approach of cross-listing will make a case, and then we take it a step further. Thank you.
Well, there are experiences from other countries, and particularly Europe. I think we've got somebody from Euronext here. I'd like a little bit to hear from you. I think you've done some work, both on looking at our exchanges, but also European experience itself. Perhaps you could give us your thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you. I'm with Euronext. My name is Eric, principal consultant with Euronext. A lot of you know me because they've seen me in similar occasions. Just a few words about what has been said and how it relates to our own experience and what we think about what could happen, or maybe should happen here in the region. First, there's one element that played strongly in our case when Euronext decided to be created. That was almost 15 years ago, September 2000, if I remember correctly. So that's 14 years ago to be precise. One element that is not really here, but played a big role. And this is competitive pressure. It was London against the continent. Okay, and that's a time, end of the 90s, very early 2000s, when every continental exchange was threatened by the overdevelopment, what was seen as the overdevelopment as London as a financial center, and there were fears that continental European exchanges might sort of disappear from the chart. So there was a very strong pressure for doing something in practical terms that could give the continental exchanges a critical mass that would allow them to compete more efficiently against London. Now, this is one of the reasons, not the only one obviously, but one of the main reasons why Paris Stock Exchange decided to join forces with Amsterdam and Brussels to start with. Then, as you know, this joint task force has been extended to Lisbon, and now we also have a little bit of London in there. So that competitive pressure is something that played a key role. At the same time, more or less at the same time, there was another experience done in the Nordic European countries that took place successfully also, another form of integration that was run by NASDAQ, where Nordic and Baltic countries, so northern countries in Europe, did also another project of integration, also for the same reason. Now, we did it the hard way by integrating fully, which is the hardest way of doing it. We have one rule book, we have one single order book, we have one clearing corp, we have one CSD, we have one membership, we have one listing, we have one everything. Okay, so that's the full integration. This is certainly not what I would recommend here for all the reasons that were mentioned before by the panelists. Now, there is another thing that I think is necessary to realize, and it relates a little bit to the very recent history of Euronext. Once again, I'm just trying to refer to our own experience, because that's what I was asked to do. As you know, Euronext recently has been relisted as an independent company. That was a few months ago, June of this year. And during this event, the company has been presented to the analysts and the financial community as a company that wishes to be a leading center on the European geography for capital raising. Now, this is something which is important, because when we talk about integrating markets, linking markets, we generally think about liquidity, transactions, volume, maybe CCPs or post-trade. But there is one big absent in this discourse, and that is the primary market. And clearly in this region, one of the big challenges, one of the big macroeconomic challenges is the possibility for SMEs, which make by far the bulk of the economy, to have access to funding. And this is the role of primary market, and this obviously should be another way of looking at linking exchanges, not so much linking them in terms of creating more liquidity, but linking them with a willingness to create a single European, pan-Arabic capital raising platform, allowing one firm from any one of the countries to raise capital freely from any one of the other countries. And this is another perspective. This is another way of thinking in terms of linking exchanges, not so much from the secondary market point of view, which is the classical, traditional view of exchanges, but rather from the primary market point of view. I'm not saying this is easy. It also presents challenges. Any type of integration whether it's a simple linkage or a full merger, every type of integration presents challenges. That's obvious, but we know how to solve them. There are a bunch of examples around the world. Dr. Saidi mentioned the Asian link. We have the experience. NASDAQ with the NOREX exchanges that I just mentioned has another experience. So there are a bunch of experiences. There are experiences in Latin America, in the US, everywhere in the world, but here. But in any case, the message I was trying to pass is that I think everybody should try thinking in terms of capital raising platform rather than liquidity improving scheme.
Right.
And if it does work, then the liquidity will obviously follow up. But it's another perspective which probably has, in my view, more chances of success than just the liquidity perspective, which is the traditional one. So this is the little word I wanted to add on based on our experience.
Thank you. Yeah, good. Thank you.
And it's not since 2005 when the GCC Secretariat appointed McKinsey to conduct the study. In fact, the Pan-Arab integration was debated long ago. And when I joined the Muscat securities market in 2001, this issue was probably raised 5 years before that time. So now we are still talking about the same subject, and the audience response was that probably it will not happen in our lifetime. I hope it will happen. There are some sort of talks between a few of the exchanges, at least in the GCC, and we will start somehow. Responding to my friend Eric, when he is proposing that ideal integration, yes, that's probably the goal, but let us start with a modest, cooperation, which we are now working with Abu Dhabi and Dubai to just achieve that. On the privatization, I disagree with you completely. The efficiency comes from the private sector. Government always thinks late, thinks slow. For them, government, if I don't earn my salary, the government will pay my salary. But if it's a private, with the technology today, you can't afford not to use the latest technology. Otherwise, you will be left behind. And all of the technologies is very advanced. They will not tailor the technology to suit the one which is cannot afford to pay for that type of technology. Technology is always advanced, and they are ahead probably of our thinking. So don't worry from that type of things. We will use the technology, and we will be using it to the best interest of the investors.
I think, to be fair, it has to be privatization plus competition. Because you could have privatization, you just turn it into a monopoly, and you'll get nowhere.
I just want to address.
I want to put the Arab Federation on the spot. So are you going to give us something next year to have a conference about?
First of all, I like what Eric mentioned about what pushed Euronext to have the integration. In fact, it was the competition from somewhere else. Maybe as we are owned by our public sector, we don't feel this competition. We have the monopoly, and we are fine with it.
So when we're losing our companies, they go and list in London.
Yeah, still...
Even Sukuk. So we say we want to have to be the masters of the universe or Sukuk. And who organizes the Sukuk? HSBC, etc., and they organize it in London.
Yeah, but I still don't feel that we have a competition that might really threaten our markets here, and that we will disappear if we don't do anything. And from my side, I think that we should not anymore have panels on integration. We should first do something, and then we will come and talk about if we did. If not, we will repeat this for all our...
Noted for Thomson Reuters.
I just want to, I agree with everything was said, but regarding some of the suggestions that were said, cross-listing of companies have not succeeded a lot, whether it's Arab countries to Arab countries, and UAE in ADX, we had Sudatel, we had QTEL, we had CBI from Egypt, we had Paltel, and those ones, in terms of volume, we didn't see that volume. It did not increase liquidity. Sudatel was probably one of the more successful ones in the sense, but people, because they were trying to hedge, so the difference in price, Sudan and here. And I honestly think today, even what Dr. Nasser talked about, DP World tried to do London, and now they're pulling back here. Why? Because the strength of our companies are known in our home country. That is where it is. That's where the investor know it. So today, if you enable the investor to access your market electronically, integration, whatever, and then goes and access those companies if he like it, you don't need to do a cross-listing because that increases the cost of the company in terms of regulatory requirements, in terms of listing and complying with another regulator. Let's not run away from doing what is right and what is possible. And I think if we focus on trying to do this, take UAE and Oman, for example, or take some more, and honestly, I think the effort, whether you do 2 exchanges or 10, is the same. So just start it up. Just go and say, we want to do this today. Do it electronically. Go to the participants who did this and show us what you've done and maybe build on it a little bit, little by little. But I'm sure that there could be small steps that we can do that next year and the year after we're going to be proud to say that we have done this.
I have two last questions, but very fast, please. Up front here. Questions, yes?
I need to defend the regulators. It's not fair. He's hammered the regulators.
You had 4 sessions, this is only one.
Yeah, but no, you hammered the regulators. Mohammed, you blamed the regulators up front, like straight in our face, that it is the regulator that's not doing the right thing. I don't think that's fair. The regulator is not a standalone entity. For instance, for ourselves, we can't do much. We do as much as the law allows us to do. But then there are certain laws that we require the government to do. There are governments that need to take this decision, not just the regulator. For instance, we don't have a bankruptcy law.
Regulators are governments, sir.
No, you mentioned the capital markets regulator strictly. But I'm talking about other regulations.
Sure.
We're part of a system and we can't be on our own. That's the only thing I wanted to say.
Sure.
We are really relying on the government on so many things, and probably half of the governments are slow to deliver.
Sure.
So we hope that that's possible.
Can I make a small suggestion on this panel and tell me if it's possible or not? Today, if you as regulators, we sit here, we're all very good friends, you all know each other and have respect. Today, if an investor wants to come, institutional company wants to open an account, let's say it's a Lebanese company wants to open an account to trade in UAE, they need to go and stamp their papers in front of the Notary Public, they need to go to the embassy, and they need to go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If today the regulator of Lebanon and the regulator of UAE says, okay, if the regulator of Lebanon will sign stamp on this document, me as a regulator in UAE will accept this and open it. Is this within your power or not?
No, absolutely not. It's not within my power.
Except the counter-regulator stamp.
No, there are certain, it's not within my powers. I mean, the UAE would not accept the regulator stamp here. They would have to, you're saying for us to accept the regulator.
It was an example. It could be the other way around, sir. But
It could be. I mean, it could be. We could sit with
What
them
you
and
need,
talk.
I think, many countries face these issues, and in Asia in particular, they have memorandums of understanding.
Exactly, that's within the MOU. If you have a certain agreement,
and
we can put that.
passporting of intermediaries. So why can't we just move ahead and have MOUs between regulators? As was pointed out with IOSCO, we've all signed up to IOSCO.
That's
and the
exactly
same
what
thing
we're doing
happens
now.
with foreign trade, by the way. Same thing happens with foreign trade. We go and sign foreign trade agreements with Europe, which implies recognition of domestic content, but we refuse to do it among each other. So we accept European products, and we define domestic content for us, but we don't do it among each other. I know we've run out of time. We have another question, final question.
Yeah, it's a comment disguised as a question, so to get it by.
So give me the
First of all, I
question.
sympathize with what Mohammed said. I think there are issues in our markets, but I would like to pose a question not to probably the market participants per se, but actually the operative word in what we're doing, capital. We are, at the end of the day, capital markets, whether authority or participants like yourselves. The issue, I think, 2.5 years ago, I was on the other side of the fence, and we were running around all the time talking about initiatives that basically pool capital from different regions or from different countries to create platforms that are regional platforms. And there was always resistance for that from the investor side, not from actually a government or a regulator. I agree with you. If the investor moves first, if capital moves first, and that's always the case, whether it's in Europe, where basically the markets or the market participants have moved ahead of the regulator and forced the regulators to come and regulate their activity, then I think regulators will be forced to do that. The issue is with capital. It's not moving in the right direction. Research is not being offered. I think you made a comment later on that partially contradicted the earlier comment because, and I see it in our markets, in all of the other markets, there are, for example, mutual funds that are offered for local stocks and regional stocks. Correct. Because you have the institutional platform to go and trade throughout the market. You don't see it. So my question is, you're obviously, some of you are involved with the private sector. I think more dialogue needs to happen with the private sector. More work needs to be done to create those platforms. And I think then you will force the hand of the regulator to come and regulate your activity.
Quick response.
No, I agree, but I think the private sector is doing it. That's all I'm going to tell you. And the private sector is doing it, and because it's not regulated, he's going to charge the investors much more. And this is a revenue that you're not seeing. Two, the mutual funds, I'm not saying about mutual funds accessing multi-markets. I'm saying they have to list in Luxembourg in order for them to be able to invest in those markets and sell to investors in those markets. If today you are a UAE licensed fund, you're not allowed to go and sell, for example, in Saudi. If it was a Luxembourg fund and you go around, he goes around, the private banker sells them, he can sell.
I don't know about Saudi, but you can come and sell it in Kuwait, definitely.
Yeah, but you have only 12, you have 12
That is a valid point. I mean, if I come to you from London or from Luxembourg, you open up the doors to any investor. If I come to you from the UAE, no thank you, I want to protect my investors. But they go and invest wherever they want. So anyway, thank you all. Please join me in thanking our panel, our speakers for a good session. And we took a little bit of time, but thank you very much.